Jamie, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Hello and welcome back to San Juan County Council's Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 regular scheduled meeting. We are in a public hearing, and we will now go into the public comments section. Mr. Stevens, Mr. Watson, any other comments for staff or questions before we go into the public comments section?
No. Nope.
Okay, great, thank you. And for the folks that are paying attention at home, we have two subjects we're going to talk about under the same public hearing. The first, we will go in and take public testimony at this point. We're open the public hearing to public testimony for a joint public hearing on Shoreline Master Program periodic update public hearing on an ordinance to update Shoreline Master Program regulations amending San Juan County Code 18.20.20, 1820.140, 1820.190, 1850.20, 1850.30, 1850.40, 1850.50, 1850.450, 1850.540, 1850.550, 1850.600, 18.110, and 15.12.30. We also will be having a discussion regarding a proposed amendment to San Juan County Code 18.50.100D. I'd like to start with that. Go to the community. Erica, real quick, or Adam, either one of you. I'm looking at a memo that has the public comment sections regarding all of the ordinance modification stuff that I just read. Can you summarize those public comments before I take whoever's on the phone?
Sure. So the memo that you have that I transmitted yesterday has the public comments that were received before noon yesterday. No other written public comments have been submitted since I transmitted this. There were two comments from Michaela Brostrom on Waldron Island, and she has several questions kind of about that temporary barge landing site, the existing non-conforming temporary barge landing site provisions and amendments to the SMP. Raising a lot of the concerns that the Friends mentioned in their spoken testimony today, kind of about environmental impacts and how are we tracking these moving forward. Another comment from Bruce Keithley suggested 5 actions to increase code enforcement for shoreline regulations. And then the Friends of the San Juan submitted a letter on July 21st raising 5 points of concern about the existing non-conforming barge landing sites. And the memo includes the full text of all of the written comments.
Okay, and just for the record, all of this has been entered into the record regarding this public hearing, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right. Council, any questions on that before I ask for public feedback?
Nope. Nope.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, I will take public comment, as I mentioned, for this public hearing. And I'm going to start, and what we'll do this is you have 3 minutes. I am going to mention who I think the person is, and please state your name. So I'm going to start with, it says Friends of San Juan's. I think it's Tina Whitman. Is that correct, Tina?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I know you provided public comment earlier in the public access section. Please feel free to, I prefer you not to restate the exact same thing you said, but you have that right if you would like.
Thank you, Rick. Yes, this is Tina Whitman with Friends of the San Juans, and I won't restate. I think you all heard me before, and some of that's in our comment letter. Based on what I heard today, though, I just have a few things that I would like to add. First is my strong support for the amendment allowing temporary deer fencing for shoreline revegetation projects. I think that's a really necessary change, and it's a great one. I also strongly support the changes, the proposed amendments to the bank stabilization section to clarify cultural resource protection and really place that where it should be, as Erica noted, in the purview of the tribes. And then again, I also would support council direction for the county having a barge landing inventory. And while I am sympathetic to the slowness of the permit process. I don't think that that can be used as just totally eliminating the need for any notification. As we talked about, there's a good flow chart that's been put together, but there's no start. So perhaps you can make a process that's faster than putting it in the permit track, but still requires, again, there has to be some way to start that process. It's going to be longer and slower if you get people just sort of pushed into the code enforcement neighbor against neighbor process. I think a clear mechanism with a clear inventory would help everyone and also help the county in its assessment of environmental impacts over the long term. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Tina. The next person I have is Jane Severin, and that number is, don't have a number, so I will unmute you. Jane, do you have any, or whomever this is, do you have any comments or questions? All right, I will come back to you. John, again, I assume, John Gomez from EDC, you're just listening, correct?
Oops.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Lori Bullock, LSWDD, I assume you're still just listening, but want to ask or offer time if you'd like it.
No, thank you.
Great, thank you. The next one I have is, I hope I say this right, Yvette Pickrell, and the number is 858-756-4672. Do you have any public comment? If you can please state your name and which island you're from.
No comment at this time. Perry, San Juan Island.
Great, thank you. Sorry if I'm just reading what the cell phone number says. Okay, the next person I have is William Potts, and I think Mr. Potts, you spoke earlier. This is the time now. Again, state your name, which island, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, Bill Potts, P-O-T-T-S, from Dinner Island. And the comment I had was on the barge landing sites, and I just wondered how big of a problem this is. It seems like you would have had a lot of complaints if it were a problem, and I think people only do this because it is expensive and it is hard to do. Only do it when there's a real need for construction or to remove items from their island, and trying to not add too big of a burden on us. I mean, we all want to comply. We all want to protect the shoreline. And it just seems like, are we creating more overhead here and more work for something that's not a problem? So I just wanted to ask the question, is this really a very big issue? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The next person is, okay. I'm going to read a number. It says the Smindering, 415-717-0546. If you could please state your name and any comment you have. All right. The next person I have is Henry Wiegand, 971-717-1867. Okay. The next one I have is, it says wireless caller, and it's 360-622-8060.
Yes, hello, this is Kyle Loring. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Hello,
good
Kyle.
morning, County Council. Sorry, what's that?
Oh, I just said nice to hear from you again. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I'm back for this hearing, and I've been retained by Friends of the San Juans to help express some of the concerns. You've already heard from Tina Whitman on quite a bit of that. And in fact, your conversation at the County Council level has already addressed a lot of the comments that were submitted. So I want to first start by offering that exact same support that Ms. Whitman did for the shoreline armoring change on archaeological issues. I think that's fantastic. I think it addresses the real concern that existed then when that language was created. And I have observed that that language has been used, I think, for purposes that weren't consistent with the original intent of the County Council. Also, I know that the County Council, I think in their last meeting, discussed coordinating approvals with federal and state level to make sure that shoreline approvals at the county level were effective once those other approvals were received. And that makes a lot of sense too. I think coordinating across governments it simplifies everything for the person who's seeking to do something and the public. We fully support that. But I also want to touch on the barge issue and then on the administrative review. Actually, the administrative decision making, I'm just going to touch on that briefly and say that we'd like the county council just to confirm that the public notice and opportunity for comment provisions will continue with that administrator taking on or the director taking on the decision making for those two areas. And also note that I think that there needs to be additional changes in chapter 18.80. For example, table 8.1 does not, it still identifies the hearing examiner as the decision maker for all shoreline permits. And so there are some changes there that would need to occur that I encourage that to be done as well with those edits. And then as for the barges, as you know, Friends has litigated barge issues before, barge landings, and I'm not seeking to do that here. Friends absolutely supports the idea that our community, our islands community needs barges and barge landings, especially on those non-ferry served islands, and just ask for some reasonable common sense approaches. One of those is to make sure that you're gathering information about what is proposed initially, whether that's through a certificate of exemption or a different process, and certainly a process that can occur faster than 2 to 3 months. Friends doesn't think that needs to occur. Maybe a different track, as Ms. Whitman just suggested, would be a great idea as well to gather that information, but also gathering some level of information about the potential impacts of the barge landing. And they can be very significant, as you know. It is important too for the county to be able to conduct its cumulative impacts review that it is doing every 4 years now under the most recent Shoreline Master Program update. So getting that information is pretty critical. Along with that, Friends certainly supports updating that 2004 list of barge landings that the County Public Works, I think, is the host of that list anyway. Taking that, it's about 15 years old now. It may not have been complete at the time, but updating that and making sure that people know where the barge landings are, including if they're on your property. So that will help simplify a lot of this as well, I think. So that would be a great step. And of course, we are sympathetic to the amount of time that would take, but again, a necessary step. And then,
speaking of time, you've exceeded 3 minutes. So if you wouldn't mind wrapping up your sentence, that would be great. And I apologize for interrupting.
No, I'm happy to do that. We did submit just one last quick point, comments about the cross references between basically the forestry log storage and transfer sites and barge landings, and recommend that those be decoupled to make it clear that the more specific provisions for logging apply to logging. And that is really it. I thank you so much for your time and for doing this good work.
Great. Thank you very much. The next person I have is 415722. I just did that one. Sorry. Henry Wiggin, 971-717-1867. Okay, and finally I have a 360-366-6186. Okay, so I'm going to call out, I've muted everyone now. If there's anyone else who would like to provide public feedback or public comment regarding this public hearing, if you could please unmute yourself and speak at this point. I will say it again, if there's anyone who is on this call who would like to provide public comment or public feedback regarding this public hearing, please provide comment at this point. All right, without seeing any, I will close the public comment section of this public hearing with the right to reopen. All right, Erica, are you available?
Yes, I am here.
So what is the plan right now? Mr. Loring did bring up something. Have we done a consistency check throughout the SMP?
So
make sure we're all lined up.
I did take a note to make sure that we haven't missed something. And there are some, you were looking for us to come. What I think we should do is, I think you can do any deliberations that you want to do today. If there's anything that needs discussing, I think you should continue this to the, maybe the next meeting date, and we can bring you back some of the things you've asked for. So one of the things I have a list of, is there a way to have a notice of temporary barge landing sites or a process, and maybe what that might look like in the SMP, and then how we might incorporate the list of barge landing sites for the purposes of the SMP versus the comp plan where the list lives. And you were looking for a timeline for that process. And then if there were any other items that you heard in the members of the public that you wanted us to look at or bring back, you could direct us to do so.
Council, I'm going to for a second, and then please follow. I think, again, another one of Mr. Loring's point, if we could just do a quick paragraph summary of the public process part on the trails, so that we can figure out how the public is aware of what we're doing, if that decision making falls to you or your position. And then I'd also like, if we can today, I would like the approval to add the amendment, but I'd like, to your point, to continue this whole thing to give people an opportunity to speak. So those are my comments. Mr. Stevens?
I'm confused. I'm not sure what we're doing now at this moment. It seems like most of the things that have been incorporated already, are we going to approve those or just continue the whole bunch?
Well, Erica, correct me if I'm wrong, you're suggesting that we continue the public hearing for another week to address some of the few changes for everything that was discussed today. And I was asking for an approval of the amendment that was just brought to be added to the continuation.
I guess my question is, we'll have to continue this anyway, but there's changes in here that I think we're agreeing to already. Just, like I said, I'm not sure what we're doing.
Okay, Mr. Watson?
I agree we need to continue the public hearing. I think we need to, Erica has her list of suggested modifications, and that way we can make sure the public is aware of that at the continuation. I have a concern about the it's Adam's slide 16, which is modifying 1850-450, and I don't think at least it's not clear to me there. This is about the cutting of timber solely incidental to the preparation of land use for other uses authorized by this chapter. And I think it should say is not considered a separate development under the SMA and does not require a separate shoreline exemption or substantial development permit, but is included in the appropriate permit application for the other use it's incidental to. Correct? Erica or Adam?
Yes, I think that is the intent. Would you like us to clarify that?
I think so, because right now you're saying, oh, it's not a development. Okay, cool, then I can cut down trees. Right? So I think it needs to be clear that the tree cutting, right, or the cutting of timber needs to be included in the original application for whatever the other use is, and and that may require a shoreline exemption or a substantial development permit, right? Whatever the other use permit is.
Yes. Yeah. This is Adam. Yeah.
So I think that needs to be clear, because it sounds like, oh, cool, I don't need a permit, for either of those things, and I can cut down trees, right? So I'd like that clarification added for the next extended hearing. And I think we need to clarify the temporary barge landing. So people can submit certificates of exemptions for other reasons than temporary barge landings, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's the problem is I think we need to figure out a different mechanism by which people apply / inform about using a temporary barge landing, because it does have greater time constraints, especially if it's an existing barge landing on our existing list. And yep, I agree, we need to put a list together. And we ought to be able to turn those around in, a couple of days, assuming it's an existing temporary barge landing with an existing use and, blah, blah, blah. But that way we're informed of it. Obviously, if it's a new barge landing or a new use, it might take more time, but it should maybe have an expedited path rather than the, I'll call it, standard land use permit application queue. So I would like to suggest that, we discuss with staff how to do that and what's appropriate, and then how to schedule that work to get done. I understand it's a workload issue, and therefore, I defer to Erica and Mr. Thomas to go back and figure out what the impact might be and what we might have to trade off. Those were my main comments and summary. So I think Erica's got the list of things to do to come back with for the continuation of the public hearing, and that we defer any action until her list is updated and people have a chance to view that list, which reflects our modifications today.
Great, thank you, Mr. Watson. And Mr. Stevens, I want to get back to your question real quick, and I want to understand how we can clarify this. Is it possible for process, if we could take a vote on adding the request from staff regarding the archaeological amendment to 1850-100? Is that something you guys would consider at this point to add it to this public hearing?
Well, if you ask me a question, I'll clarify the question. Bill, Mr. Watson is saying, including everything that we agreed to today, and I haven't known we agreed to anything. And that's where my confusion is. It's like there's some amorphous group of something out there. So I'd like clarity on Erica's list, and if we agree with it, and then secondly is to approve, get that in the record on the archaeological stuff.
Okay, thank you. Erica, would you mind again going over the points of direction that you feel is coming from council today?
Yes, this is Erica. First, your council's looking for some sort of a process about notice of barge landing sites, and I would expect I would take a look at the code and talk to the PA's office and determine whether or not where that would go and what that would look like, and whether or not it needs to actually be in the code or it can be an administrative process.
Yep.
And then a timeline for putting together a process for coming up with a list of barge landing sites. Certainly I can provide the ones that exist today that we're aware of to you if you wanted me to. I can attach that for what we just have today. You want me to summarize the public process for trails, or at least the process, the notice process for the what would be required for public notification on an administrative substantial development permit, which that wouldn't actually be a code change. That would just be, some clarification or a slide in a PowerPoint presentation. And then we are going to check and see if there are any other inconsistencies on the administrative substantial development permit in 1880, that it's making sure that we've got that. And then finally, there is clarification of the section under logging or tree cutting, that any tree cutting, if it's has to be reviewed one way or another. Either it's logging or if it's incidental to the original permit, it still needs a permit approval. So that's my list. And what we could do is we could provide you a memorandum of options for those things, except for the public process. I think that's just an explanation. But we can put a staff report together that addresses these things for the next meeting.
Well, and then
Thank you. That helps a lot.
all right, and then of course the addition of the archaeological modification.
I can add that to the staff report. Yes.
Right. Because that would be a change to the published public hearing version of the code.
That's correct.
And to council, outside of what Erica just outlined, were the rest of the changes that we didn't ask for questions, are you okay with those? Kind of head nod, but like for example, the slide 12 says the general requirements with dollar increases that were not, there was a couple of slides that we didn't really have comments on. Is everything else that we didn't address okay to move forward?
It is by me.
At this point, yeah, I think so.
And Mr. Stevens, I apologize if I didn't lay this out correctly. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. So is there anything else regarding the presentation today before we talk about the amendment?
No.
I'd like to approve the amendment and then continue the public hearing, if that's all right, so it can be included into the public hearing. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Is there any questions regarding the amendment that was brought forward in the staff report dated 7/27 and also briefly discussed today regarding amending San Juan County Code 18.50.100D? Without seeing
I don't have any.
For approval to include into the continuation into this public hearing to be continued.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the amendment submitted by staff. Sorry, I got to get that section here. So of 1850.100.d to be added to the official public hearing version of the SMP update for review at the continued public hearing.
Second.
Is it all right, council, if we add just the S that you guys talked about with the edits as provided?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the addition of the amendment that staff recommends for San Juan County Code 18.50.100D to be required in the public hearing for continuation with edits provided by council. Any questions or comments? Without seeing all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried 3-0. Thank you very much. At this point, are there any other questions for staff regarding what we worked on today?
Nope.
Without seeing any, I would entertain a motion for continuation of this public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move we continue the joint public hearing on Shoreline Master Program periodic update to, was it August 11th? 12th.
11th.
Yeah, to August 11th, 2020 at 9:15 a.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for continuation of a public hearing, a joint public hearing between Ecology and San Juan County on the Shoreline Master Program periodic update on ordinance to update Shoreline Master Program regulations amending San Juan County Code 18.20.20, 18.20.140, 18.20.190, 18.50.20, 18.50.30, 18.50.40, 18.50.50, 18.50.450, 18.50.540, 18.50.550, 18.50.600, 1880.110, 15.12.30, and the newly added San Juan County Code 1850.100D for a 9:15 on August 11th in Friday Harbor, Washington, and Skype. Any other questions or comments?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Erica and Adam for great work on this and for all the public comment. We will again take public comment next in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is a time check. It's 11 o'clock. I just want to make sure, Mr. Dodd, are you on the phone?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, council, before we get into the COVID hearing, do you need another break or are you guys okay?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, great. So at this point, we will go into our weekly COVID-19 coronavirus emergency response update with Kyle Dodd, Environmental Health Manager and EOC Director.
Good morning, Council. Kyle Dodd, Environmental Health Manager, as the Chair mentioned, and have been serving as Incident Commander of the COVID County Response. Some updates for you this week, starting with the statewide situation. The state is over 54,000 cases as of this morning, and over the previous 24-hour period, gained 861 new cases. Locally, since our last briefing last Tuesday, we have gained 4 new cases in the county. We are up to 28 cases total. Those 4 new cases consist of 2 on San Juan Island, 1 on Lopez, and 1 on Orcas. We have modified our reporting of new cases. Up until last Friday, we were issuing an individual press release for each new case. We have modified that reporting of new cases to consist of a website update for the total number of cases and breaking them out by island. And we will do that on the day reported. And as far as a summary of the cases, we will do that on a weekly basis in the form of a press release to kind of roll up those instead of reporting those with a press release and the time associated around that after each case. Last Thursday, the Governor and Secretary of Health had a press conference related to the Safe Start phased reopening plan. And as we discussed last Tuesday, with the increasing number of cases statewide, as was expected, there were some modifications to that Safe Start reopening plan, and that has been revised to be more restrictive. And this is that dial that we heard a lot about in March has been dialed back. So the governor has rolled back some measures to essentially decrease the number of contacts outside of the household that the public is having, and mainly focusing on indoor settings, and also limiting the duration of those contacts in those indoor settings, as a lot of the increase in number of cases have been attributed around those types of situations. So just to hit on a couple of rollbacks, mainly pertaining to Phase 3, which doesn't affect us currently, but just to give an example of some of the items that were rolled back statewide. So under the gathering category, instead of allowing 50 people in Phase 3, gatherings have been reduced to no more than 10. The restaurant capacity was rolled back to that of the level of Phase 2. So 50% capacity and table size no larger than 5. And then all other businesses in Phase 3 that had a 50 person capacity were rolled back to 10. So again, trying to limit the interactions which have been serving to continue the increase in cases statewide. In particular, some of the changes that were made to the phased restart, there are some changes to restaurants that will affect our county in phase 2. And the restaurant guidance has been revised, and we will get that out to our establishments this week. But changes go into effect on Thursday, which is the 30th. And just a couple of bullet points under restaurant guidance changes. So when it comes to alcohol, service must stop at 10 p.m. In all establishments, and this applies to phases 1, 2, 3 until 4 when that restriction gets lifted. So this will affect all of our county establishments. And then pertaining to indoor seating, they've revised the guidance to limit that indoor seating to members of the same household. So again, trying to limit the interactions outside of households and prohibit that duration of time for folks mingling. Face coverings in restaurants, it used to be required anytime you were not seated, and you could take the face covering off when you were seated. That has been restricted a bit more, and you're required to wear a face covering anytime you are not seated, so either waiting for a table or get up to use the restroom. And also while you are seated and talking until the point in time which you are eating, and then the face covering must be replaced. So there can be long durations of time where somebody is seated and without wearing a face covering, and the requirement is to try and limit that to just when somebody is eating or drinking. Also, weddings and funerals. So there were revisions made to those guidance documents, and that goes into effect on August 6th to allow for those that were planned that are coming up relatively quickly between now and then to occur. But in all phases, the maximum indoor capacity is restricted to 20% of the capacity of the building, or up to 30 people, whichever is less. And even with those restrictions, the 6 feet of distancing is still required between households. Another big change is that only ceremonies are permitted. So wedding and funeral ceremonies are allowed, but receptions are prohibited. And again, those requirements go into effect on August 6th, and we have identified that will be a major change for our county, and will affect our businesses as well. And the face covering, you'll recall that there's a statewide face covering order that went into effect at the last third week in June, and that order required face coverings to be in all public buildings. So the order was expanded late last week to include all other indoor spaces. So those elevators, hallways, shared spaces, and also any other outdoor location where that 6 feet of social distancing cannot be maintained. So again, with the experience over the 4 months prior, there have been some large outbreaks associated with face coverings not being worn in some of those other public spaces. So this is an attempt to try and limit those outbreaks and start working back down this current peak of cases that we're on. The next thing I wanted to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And there was a lot of discussion last week around face coverings. And the council, the Board of Health, and staff over the last couple months since our local face covering order went into effect in the middle of May, we've been all receiving differing reports of face covering compliance. And I think all of us had our own experiences of what we have observed as well. So this face covering survey was an attempt to quantify mask usage. And we understand it was a limited survey, but it provides some data for us to start with. So again, the purpose was just to gather data and as a starting point to identify future outreach efforts. And this is something that we can easily repeat and compare trends over time and measure the results of any targeted outreach that we have made. So big thanks to council members, Board of Health members, and all the volunteers who helped to compile this information over the course of last week. I will briefly step through the three different parts of the survey and kind of summarize what was found. So the first part was...
Kyle?
Yes.
Your desktop's not being displayed.
Thank you for that.
Can I ask you a question regarding weddings?
You may.
So just for clarification, I understand the no reception part. Is there any difference in the number of people allowed outdoor versus indoor? Or is there a number allowance period?
So I just got that phone call late last night as well. I haven't returned that voicemail, but I'm prepared to tell that individual that there is not a maximum capacity outdoor, as long as, again, the 6 feet social distancing between households can be maintained. So I have not seen any specific cap, so that would be my response.
Good, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm sharing again. When I looked up at one point and I did see the telltale yellow outline, but that must have went away. So the first part was monitoring walk-off ferry traffic and selected boats arriving from Anacortes, both on Monday and Friday of last week were identified. And on Monday, the 5 o'clock boat arriving from Orcas was surveyed, 20 walk-offs, all with faces covered. The Friday Harbor boat arriving at 4 p.m. on Monday, 40 passengers, 31 with face coverings. Friday, we monitored the arriving boat from Lopez at 3:55. 27 walked off with 22 faces covered. The Orcas boat that arrived at 4:44, 9 folks walked off, all were masked. 30 people walked on, 24 had masks and 6 had them ready. And then the Inner Island boat was also monitored just after 4 o'clock, and 6 folks walked off, and they were all masked. Finally, the Friday Harbor boat that arrived at 3:15, 96 people walked off, and only 2 were not wearing masks. So overall, again, this was last week, those selected boats, the mask compliance of those just walking off was between 77 and 100% mask compliance. The second part of the survey was titled Pedestrian Survey. So this is volunteers were staged on Lopez in the center of the village, on Orcas just in the East Sound core, and on San Juan Island at the corner of Spring and 2nd Streets just to observe those out and about walking around on the streets. So Lopez, and all these occurred on Wednesday during the same time between 12 and 12:30. And on Lopez, 34 were observed, and all 34 had their faces covered. On Orcas, 136 were observed, and 126 had their faces covered. Of those 10 that didn't, 5 did not have masks, and 5 had masks that were not in place, but either in hand or around the neck. And finally, San Juan Island, 109 total people were observed, 99 had faces covered, and of the 10 who did not, 8 had visible masks. The third part of the survey was around businesses, and there were 2 parts to the business survey. The EDC helped us out with an online survey to businesses, and the results of that survey are shown there. So businesses were asked regarding their face covering compliance experiences, and there were 41 businesses that had responded. Of those 41, 9 were on Lopez, 11 on Orcas, 20 on San Juan, and 1 on Shaw. And a summary of their experiences were that 38 out of 41 reported a very high compliance, 2 were high, and 1 was moderate. 36 out of 41 businesses reported high compliance from those not wearing face coverings after they were asked to do so. So after a reminder, they were able to get those that were not initially in the high category to that point. The second part of the business survey was volunteers actually visiting businesses in person and asking questions about the number of customers wearing face coverings and the business's experience with customers around that topic. So on the screen are the businesses that were visited on Lopez. It looks like there were 9 there, and the compliance rate, as you can see in the right-hand column, ranged anywhere from 70% up to 100%. Moving down to Orcas Island, our volunteer on Orcas added a column, which we appreciate. So with these businesses, let me try and modify my screen here so we can get all of them on one page. So this is a list of Orcas businesses. I think there were 14. And the volunteer asked a question about initial compliance with patrons showing up to the door. That's in the third column. And the ranges there are anywhere from 95% to 100% compliance. And then asked a follow-up question of those unwilling to comply, what was kind of the status? And for a couple businesses here, we had 2% just refused, and one family decided to decline to wear one, and I believe they exited the business. So some additional information regarding the Orcas survey. And finally, San Juan Island. So the list of businesses there is on the screen now, and I'm just looking at the range of compliance. All were north of 90% and some at 100%. So again, wanted to share that again as a discussion item that has come up several times in previous meetings. I would say that overall, Again, this one snapshot in time shows that face covering compliance is quite high. Of course, there's always room for improvement. However, I think that compliance will continue to improve with increased focus not only locally, but focus statewide on education and enforcement. Folks that are traveling from out of county are now required to wear face coverings in all their local counties in accordance with that statewide face covering order that went into effect on June 24th. Again, I think this is becoming more of a habit, and we'll continue to see higher percentages of those complying. We still do get reports of specific cases of folks not wearing face coverings, and our team continues to follow up on those. Like I said, there's always room for improvement, and we're not posting this survey up as a be-all, end-all, but again, it starts quantifying what a lot of us have just been seeing out there anecdotally, and is a place to start. So we'll discuss as a team, and if we need to make a recommendation on staffing or outreach, we can certainly come back to that.
Great work, Kyle. Thank you.
You're welcome. So just a couple more things from me. I'm going to go through the statewide dashboard and just hit a couple points and not go into too much depth. So this is the governor's dashboard. You can see statewide where we currently are as a state. We are not meeting the goal of less than 25 new cases in the last 2 weeks per 100,000. We are not meeting the goal of having more than 50 individuals tested for each new case during the prior week. And the state is also not meeting the goal of having less than 2% of individuals testing positive over the past week. So that's an idea statewide of where we're at, and I will just need to select, just briefly show where we're at in the county. Again, as I mentioned, with the 4 new cases over the last week, that bumped us out of meeting the goal of having less than 25 cases per 100,000. We're up at 35 cases, but we are meeting all the other metrics. So for testing, and those testing, the percentage testing positive, and also the hospital metrics, we are also meeting.
You had 28 cases.
Going to jump over to the other, and this has always been a point of frustration for me. We have 2 dashboards, one that comes out of the governor's office and one that comes out of DOH. But those are the tools we're working with. So I just wanted to show the epi curve back from when the outbreak first occurred in the state. You saw this first peak right around April there at 400, and then, as we all know, we are riding the second peak up, and as you can see the projection here, we have some data over the last week that indicates that that we have crested, and we're starting to ride down the other end of that epi curve, which is telling. However, we'll wait a few more weeks here before we're able to claim that we're officially there. But wanted to show that as kind of a visual of I've been reporting for the last couple weeks of all these increases in number of tests, positive cases statewide, and again, based on this graphic, it appears that we might have crested that and are on our way down. So with that, I will stop there, and I can certainly answer any questions that you have or address anything else that I didn't so far.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions?
I only had one. How's the infection curve, the RE curve, work going? Is it getting back closer to 1?
Yeah, so I haven't seen an update on that since our so that the R1.
R1. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, the rate of infection, that work is done by the Institute for Disease Modeling, and I haven't seen an update for that this week, but when we do, we'll certainly relay that.
Thank you.
And again, that's when you have an R greater than 1, you can expect to see exponential growth in cases, and if we get that R, the reproductive rate below 1, we can expect to see a decrease in cases. And over the last couple weeks, that has been the conversation, the hot topic with schools, because the last Institute for Disease Modeling report indicated that if we can't get the reproductive rate below 1, then it is very likely that if schools get back in session, that we're likely to see exponential growth. So have been conversations with school districts starting this Monday around what their plans are, and there'll be weekly calls from here on out, working with them to come up with their reopening plans.
Mr. Watson?
No questions at this time.
None for me either. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. Dr. James, we're running a little tight on time, but is there anything you'd like to add to this week's report? Okay.
Is he even on the call?
Yeah, I didn't see him, so.
Okay. Just wanted to offer in case he was. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a question of Kyle then?
Oh, of course. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
I thought I was too, but I thought Dr. James was on the call. So.
Please go ahead, Jamie.
Okay. Kyle, I'm just wondering, everything has been that, we can keep our spacing outside, and where are we on camping? Being able to have more than 50% at camping places?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we discussed that last Wednesday at our command staff meeting. Dr. James indicated that he has put quite a bit of thought into that and has a draft health officer order that he was going to be running by John Kane. So I don't have an exact date, but I know that he has considered that and has actually drafted an order. We'll get an update from him when we can talk to him next.
Okay, thank you. Now I don't have anything else.
So, Jamie,
yeah.
So are you interested in trying to increase camping to 100%?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Because in our last reports from Dr. James, he even said with the masks, he's not as worried about it when people are just outside and they're not around anybody. And, whether it's a county campsite or a private campsite, I know that people have taken precautions when they thought we would be going to 100%. Have done the things they need to do to keep everyone safe. So that's why I was asking.
Right.
And just for clarification regarding the camping, it's still 100% on the marine parks, the marine state parks, correct, that are not ferry served? Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So, yeah, Kyle, let us know. I'm not sure what I think about going to 100% for camping, but I'd be interested to hear what the doctor has to say at some point. All right, is there anything else for Kyle or any staff regarding our COVID update?
Nope.
Okay. Moving forward, council need a break. You're all right to keep going?
I'm fine to keep going.
All right. Again, thank you, Kyle, very much for covering this week and for all your work. And I appreciate the survey. I think that's a really good kind of point in time look at how compliance is going. So thank you. At this point, we will recess our council meeting and convene the governing board of the Lopez Solid Waste Disposal District. And the action item we will look at doing is to approve a resolution providing for the submission to the voters of Lopez Solid Waste District a proposition authorizing the imposition of a one-year property tax levy as allowed for by RCW 36.58.150. Lori Bullock, District Manager, LSWDD. And again, I apologize for calling on you twice in public comment. I just wanted to make sure. But the floor is yours.
Thank you. Not a problem. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'll just keep this fairly brief and take any questions that you may have. So this is Lori Bullock. I'm the District Manager of Lopez Solid Waste Disposal District. LSWDD would like the governing board to approve our resolution asking voters of the district to vote on a property tax levy for the year of 2021 in the amount of $105,000. These funds will help support our operations, especially needed safety measures and investments in capital improvements. We also have a need to plan ahead for replacing equipment. We have a lot of aged equipment, including a backhoe, truck, forklift, and dumpsters. And basically we have a replacement schedule for those coming up this next year and into the next 5 years. And so we really need to plan ahead for those equipment items. Safety measures that we're discussing is to keep our staffing levels the same. We'd like to expand our baler shed soon to create more space for equipment and storage, and we're also making improvements to our Z wall for safety. We've definitely seen an increase of garbage volumes these last few years and have had a steady increase in 2020. And that's all I have to report at this point.
Lori, is that an increase over last year?
Our volumes are actually staying about steady this year. And I would say that because of Tioli being closed, so any of the culling that we would have to do with Tioli, we're not seeing those volumes, but we're pretty much exactly on par for our volumes last year. And the last year, we actually saw a 20% increase from the previous year. So we're keeping those volumes the same.
I was wondering about the amount on the resolution.
The resolution. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry. I'm all about garbage volumes right now. Doing lots of reporting on that. Sorry, it is exactly the same as last year.
Okay.
Don't we usually get an annual budget when we get this resolution?
The budget will come this fall. So what we have done in the past that I have seen, this is my first year doing the levy process, is there's been a presentation, but in that presentation, I don't remember seeing any budget projections at that point.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the placement on the ballot of a resolution providing for the submission to the voters of Lopez Solid Waste Disposal District a proposition authorizing the imposition of a one-year property tax levy as allowed for by RCW 36.58.150.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution providing for the submission to the voters of Lopez Solid Waste Disposal District a proposition authorizing the imposition of a one-year property tax levy as allowed for by RCW 36.58.150. Any questions?
No.
Nope.
Did I say that correctly? Sorry, Jamie.
I said no. Oh.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Laura, is there anything else for the governing body while we're here?
I have nothing at this time other than to say thank you on behalf of the managing board and staff.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. All right. At this point, we will adjourn the governing Lopez Solid. We will adjourn the governing board meeting and reconvene our San Juan County Council meeting. The next action item is to approve the 2020 Very Low Income Housing Award. Ryan Page, are you housing program coordinator? Are you on the? Yes, I see you on the line.
I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yep, sir.
Very good. Thank you for the time today, Council. You have a staff report in front of you regarding the Housing Advisory Committee's recommendation for the 2020 Very Low Income Housing Awards. Just as a reminder, this is an award of funds that is funded from document recording fee surcharges. This year we had $32,000 available for this award. If you recall, usually we have $25,000 available, but last year we only awarded $18,000 and the council had requested that the remaining funds be rolled over to this year's award, so that's what we've done. The total request that we received was $69,078 over 4 applications, and I'm going to briefly go over the project applications that we received before going into the recommendation. But in your packet, there's a complete PDF of all the project applications that we received. So in alphabetical order, we received a application from Diamond Management, which is a property management firm that manages a couple apartment complexes in the county, and they had made a request for $32,000 to help fund a new sewer pump tank at the Westview apartment complex on Lopez Island. Next application was from the Lopez Community Land Trust. They had requested $5,150 to help partially fund a rainwater catchment system at one of their home ownership projects at their Salish Way project. The next request was from Opal Community Land Trust. They had requested $10,000 to establish a sort of revolving deposit assistance fund for April's Groves and new tenants that are moving into that apartment complex. And then we received a request from Orcas Longhouse, which was for $21,928. And this was a request to replace the flooring in the Orcas Longhouse located on Orcas Island. That is all the original flooring. So all of the full detailed applications are attached. The recommendations from the advisory committee was to fully fund the Longhouse at $21,928, fully fund the Lopez Community Land Trust project at $5,150, use the remaining fund of the $32,000 to help Opal establish that revolving loan deposit assistance fund at $4,922. And then they were not able to recommend funding for the Westview apartment complex project at this time. Couple of reasons for that. One is there was a feeling that there wasn't sufficient detail in the application regarding the scope of the project. Even though the request was for $32,000, the entire project was considerably more expensive. It wasn't clear what the project timeline for that would be, what contractor would be completing that work, where the remaining funding would be coming from, and the general feeling was that a request of that size and a project of that complexity would probably be better suited for something like the home fund because of the sort of level of detail that would be required for such a large request. And so that's the big, broad, general overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Watson.
No questions.
Ms. Stevens?
I don't have any questions.
I don't either. Was there any rationale why I guess I have a question. Excuse me. No, I just, there wasn't any requests from San Juan Island, so I was just curious, is this the typical outreach and there just wasn't a need or desire, or?
I think that's a good question, Rick. I think part of it is that some of the maybe projects that might be happening on San Juan Island, for instance, like the Harbor View apartments that are undergoing a major renovation right now, the Opportunity Council has already spoken with me that they're applying for REIT funds. And so, the Orcas Longhouse is managed by Ad West, who also manages a number of other low-income apartment complexes in Friday Harbor. And so my hope is that it's a matter of just those things being in good shape. But I think we could probably always do to take a look at our outreach and make sure, as part of this award process, we send out notification letters to all the property management companies that we're familiar with, anyone who's applied in the past, and we also go through a process of typically posting a notice in the papers to let people know that these funds are available. So I think we could always do better, but as far as the lack of a San Juan specific project, I'd like to think that's a combination of other sources of funds being available and hopefully just not necessarily a need at this time.
Great, thank you very much for that clarification. I don't have any other questions. I entertain a motion at this point if council is ready.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the funding recommendation of the Housing Advisory Committee for the 2020 Very Low Income Housing Grant Awards as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the funding recommendation of the Housing Advisory Committee for the 2020 Very Low Income Housing Grants Awards as presented. Any final questions for staff or comments? Without seeing any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Ryan, as always, thank you for your excellent work both in the EOC and helping us move forward with affordable housing options for our entire community. So thank you very much. Our next item is a discussion action item. Approve sale of surplus personal property at public auction and schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, August 18th at 9:15 a.m. Van, every ER&R manager. Are you on the?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Council. This is Van, Fleet Services. Well, today we're here to talk about surplus property. Every year as we receive new equipment, we start a list to get rid of old equipment. You should have received a list with 5 items on it. The first 2 are fairly old items. The other 3 are newer, but they are all high dollar items. Did everyone receive those documents?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to just go down the list with you guys so you have an understanding of some of the expenditures that these items incur or have over their life. When we look at the first item on the list, it's a 10-yard dump truck, kind of the nuts and bolts of public works. That vehicle will be 18 years old in October. Currently, in terms of O&M expenditures, that's parts, tires, shop labor, fuel. That total is $133,000 over that 18-year period. So definitely a high dollar item. The new one on order is going to be in the $200,000 range, but definitely a staple of public works and something that's overdue and should be replaced.
And that's the oldest one we have?
That is, well, we have 3 of those, but since the item is so expensive, I can't do 3 at 1 year, so I'm going to do 1 every year for the next 3 years is my plan.
Got it.
Yep. The next item on the list is newer. It's a '08. It is a shoulder tractor mower combination, and those things really eat the groceries in terms of lawnmower blades and mower decks and fuel. So definitely a high dollar item, something that has a lot of vibration and leverage hanging out there over the road. So it's on the list. The replacement is here. When we talk about expenditures and O&M for that vehicle, it is currently going to be 12 years old. It has $196,000 worth of expenditures on it in that short time. So, but definitely a high impact piece of equipment that gets used almost daily, year round. So we want to keep that in the shortest lifespan possible. Stay in that honeymoon period with little breakdowns and just fuel and go. So the third item here is.
I'm sorry, Van. So
yeah, go ahead.
On that tractor mower, do you have the number of hours, or I think is how it's measured on a tractor, right?
Yeah, it's 4,500. So it has 4,500 hours on it.
Hours on it. Okay.
Yep. The third item is a newer item, and this right here is a mini grader. This was purchased in 2018. And the idea behind this was to consolidate a old grader from Waldron and Decatur into one piece of equipment that would be moved seasonally to accomplish work. Great idea, but a hard piece of equipment to run because the controls are totally different than a standard grader. On top of that, the person that used to run this piece of equipment, Fred out on Waldron, he has retired in that time. And then lastly, it's an expensive piece to own, to be used only once in a while. So this is part of a shift in management style and really crunching the numbers. We have since taking this out of service. It only has 50 hours. We have put a tractor there on Waldron, which is way easier to use. There's no ramp up in training, and it's quite considerably cheaper to own. So that's why you see that on the list.
And you're only expecting $14,800 for it?
No, that's the salvage value. So that we do that by the 10% of the purchase price, and that's if we kept it to its total lifespan. So what I expect to get from that is about $130,000.
Okay.
On these higher dollar items, I will obviously set reserves with the auction house. So, we don't hit that number, we keep it and we try again later. And definitely, like with the boats that are coming up, there's optimal seasons for selling, right? So
the fair market value column is what you're expecting to get from it.
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
Nope, you're fine. Okay, the next item, VB012, that is the big Munson boat. It is currently, let me get here. It is currently almost 9 years old. In the O&M column for this boat, we purchased this boat for $322,000 almost 9 years ago. To date, we are at $269,000 in O&M. So that is over 2/3 the value of this boat. When I crunch numbers on the boats, 4 years seems to be the magic honeymoon number. 5 years really seems to be the year that things start going bad. Yeah. So our plan is, in talking with Colin and Public Works, is to reassess what we have for boats, get something that is more utilitarian, something that has less systems, something easier to use. This boat was purchased thinking that we would take pickup trucks and cars all over the islands. But the reality is it's cheaper to barge those items than to own this boat. So we will reconfigure and purchase something smaller and utilitarian with this sale. I'm hoping to accomplish that and possibly give funds back to that department also. Does anyone have any questions regarding that one?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. VB013. Okay, so that's the newer one. That was purchased in 2016. That boat is right at 4 years. So kind of still in the honeymoon stage. It has deferred maintenance waiting for it currently. We put that off due to the COVID. We did not want to be without boats and having to move supplies and people and personnel, right, from island to island. But it is 4 years old. Let's see, 4.75. Current O&M on that is $86,000. So I believe by the spring of next year, once we get all the services done, we're going to be right there against that 2/3 the value. On top of that, I think that needs to be reconfigured to address some safety issues with vision. We've had some close calls with that. And then also rethink how the boat, what we are going to carry on that boat and how it needs to be set up, right? So that's the story there. Does anyone have any questions about any of that?
Nope.
I don't.
I do not.
All
right.
Yeah, the list is small, but like I said, some of those items are very high dollar. So,
So you're expecting to only take those two boats and sell them off and replace them with a single boat? Is that the strategy?
No, the plan is to take those two boats and replace them with two cheaper boats.
Got it. Okay.
That is my plan. That when I run the numbers on that scenario, it should save roads about $45,000 a year in rental. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, I believe they're going to be thrifty on O&M. That big boat the last couple of years, O&M wise, has been $25,000. So right off the bat, you're adding $2,000 a month to their payment. It's just past its prime, right? It's past its prime, and the thing is really too fancy. I mean, I think that you want to be careful about putting too many systems that you rely on when you're in the ocean. And then on top of that, it's just more stuff to break. So, yeah, that's the plan going forward.
Have we thought about moving the slips out of the main Friday Harbor Marina and moving it down to Shipyard Cove or Jensen's?
I have not had that conversation. I wouldn't mind having that conversation.
Well, assuming it's cheaper, obviously.
Yeah, assuming it's cheaper, I was going to say, I know that we have marine facilities. I would love to. I don't know what the rules are about that, right? I know the police the sheriff and fire have boats like at Orcas Landing. I don't know if they pay for those or, I mean, when I look at the big boat costs, when it was moored here, it was $400 a month right here in San Juan. So for a year, $400 a month over 8 years is quite the bill, right?
Yep.
If we could find a place that was free to us that we owned, that would help things for sure. I could bring up that conversation with Colin and Bird Dog that for sure.
I mean, Mr. Thomas, is there any reason for us to have boats in the main marina?
No, we can certainly talk to Todd about other possibilities that the port have that may be cheaper.
Okay, just thinking.
No, it's great. I appreciate the suggestion.
Stevens, anything?
This is set to go to public hearing on the 18th of August. If everyone agrees with going forward, that's what I would recommend.
Great, thanks, man. Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions?
No, I know that on the smaller boat, that sight line, the way the window has been an issue from the get-go. So.
Right.
No, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Anything?
No, this is just a good example of staff's effort to, as Van said, hit the honeymoon period, try to have equipment that has less O&M, get rid of stuff that we're not using, and barge or lease instead. So it's cheaper to maintain. That means roads and other departments are paying less to rent that equipment from ER&R.
All right, great. Thank you. Without any other comments from council, I entertain a motion for setting a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move we set a public hearing for Tuesday, August 18th at 9:15 a.m. for approval of sale of surplus personal property at public auction and.
What was that?
At public auction. That was it.
Oh, okay. Second.
We have a motion and a second to set a public hearing for Tuesday, August 18th at 9:15 a.m. in Friday Harbor, Washington for the approval of sale of surplus personal property at public auction. Any comments or questions? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Van, thank you very much. I appreciate the new way Public Works and ER&R is looking at some of the assets that we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next, it's 11:58. Would you like to power through the next couple options or have an hour for lunch?
Lunch.
All right. Is 1 o'clock okay or 1:15?
1 should be good for me.
1's good for me.
All right. So Ingrid, we will now go into recess for lunch and return at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you back at 1.